The Isle of Wight sits approximately 4 miles off the southern coast of mainland England. It is a small island, only about 150 square miles or about 385 square kilometers, about half the size of Singapore. It has only about 145,000 people, and in 1996 there were only 129,000. Our story takes place on November 2nd, 1996, on the northern side of the island, in Cowes, a small town specializing in the manufacturing of yachts and sails. A city where a 16-year-old boy, seen by witnesses and CCTV footage until 12:06 a.m., vanishes from the island and is still missing to this day, over 28 years later. What happened to Damien Nettles? What are the events that led up to his disappearance? What secrets does this case uncover about the dark side of this town and the police sworn to protect it? Let's start with Damien. Damien Nettles was born on June 21st, 1980 at 1:27 a.m. to his parents, Edward and Valerie Nettles. He was described as a beautiful baby boy with big brown eyes, scrumptious and loving, an endearing child full of laughter. It's said that he loved his big sister Sarah and followed her everywhere. He was always a joker. He wanted to make people laugh. There wasn't a malicious bone in his body. He liked to help people, and since he went missing, many school friends remember the kind deeds he did. He would help the underdog, sometimes to his own disadvantage. He was sensitive, caring, loving, and thoughtful. There was not a bad bone in his body. Damien was a funny, happy boy, the life and soul of every party, and liked to make his friends laugh. Arms and legs flailing, he was not always appreciated by his teachers, but he was not disliked at all. He took a keen and avid interest in music of all types. He loved being involved with a band that he and his friends had put together. He helped his sister Sarah study for her A-level final, and she went on to university in Portsmouth. He became serious with his desire to do well on his exams and go to university as well. He talked about doing marine biology. He had his whole life ahead of him, until it was cruelly taken on a dark, fateful night in 1996. The events on the night of his disappearance are surprisingly well documented. Damien's father, Ed, dropped Damien off at the house of his friend, Chris Boone, who lived across the Medina River in East Cowes at around 7:30 p.m. They planned to attend a small house party in Chris's neighborhood, but when Damien turned out to be the odd one out of the three couples there, the two of them left with claims that they were going to buy some, let's just say, lettuce for community guidelines' sake. The two friends took the ferry back to Cowes, stopping to buy some cider along the way. Damien was carrying a black Camry he had taken from the party, and continued carrying it for the rest of the night. It's never been found. The Hampshire police have an almost complete timeline of Damien's movements from 9:30 p.m. to the last time he is seen on CCTV at 12:06 a.m. Chris said that Damien was going in and out of pubs looking for his sister. Damien was 6'4" at the time, and even though he was 16, he had a good chance of getting into local bars without question. He looked much older than he actually was. Even though Damien's sister Sarah was in Portsmouth at college, it's possible that Damien was just using her as an excuse to get into the bar. At 10 p.m., they both walked into Yorkie's fish and chip shop, ordered some food, ate, then picked up a salt shaker, set it back down, and left. By 10:30, Chris was ready to go home, and he assumed that Damien was going to head home as well, but Damien still had an hour and a half left to go, as he had been able to negotiate a midnight curfew with his mom before going out that evening. At 11:15, a witness reported they saw Damien trying to open the door of a blue Ford Fiesta in the parking lot of Harbor Lights pub. The last person to see Damien alive face-to-face was a man sitting in his car waiting at a bus stop, and he saw a, quote, miserable figure huddled eating chips. He reported that the teenager came up to his car and looked like he was on something. Damien says 2 times to the man, "They are watching us," before clearing the rain from the witness's car windows with his sleeve and walking away. I would literally poop my pants if that happened to me. That is the most terrifying sentence that anybody could ever say to a person. I can't imagine what might have been going through that guy's head at the time. Valerie said that there were only 2 possible routes home, through the park or along the seafront. She is convinced Damien would not have taken the coastal path due to the nasty weather and the dark, unfriendly path of the seafront. That walk would not have appealed to him, she says. So, what happened to Damien? Did he traverse the seafront path and fall into the water in his inebriated state? After searching the water for years, it's unlikely that this is what happened, as it was determined by Harbormaster Captain Henry Wrigley that the current on the night of his disappearance would have brought his body back to shore. Upon waking to see Damien's empty bed, the parents were worried. Damien has never done anything like this. When Valerie calls Chris and hears that Damien isn't over there, they get even more worried. They spend all day Sunday walking around on foot, going from street to street, covering the space between their neighborhood and High Street. When Valerie went to the police station on Sunday at 3 p.m., it appeared that there was nobody there. Well, the front door was locked, and she couldn't see anyone through the windows. She was there for several minutes, banging on the door and hollering, but nobody answered her calls for help. When she called the mother station on the island, she was told that the station was not manned at the time. However, when she told them that she needed to report a missing person, the officer on the phone excused himself for a moment, and then they saw someone walking up to the front door of the station, proving that there was someone there all along, ignoring the people outside. Imagine if there had actually been a real emergency. As a police officer, ignoring people outside actively calling for help is beyond negligence of duty. It is pure insanity. The police finally let her in, and she tells the officer everything that's happened, explaining that her 16-year-old son was missing. The officers respond dismissively, telling her that they should all just go home and wait for him to show up, as teenagers do this all the time. They were not concerned at all. In fact, they were kind of rude. When Valerie called the station over the next few days, asking about any news, they basically told her to stop calling them, and that she was being annoying. These police suck. Imagine your only duty being to protect and serve, and not doing either of those things consistently. As the days went by without any police action, the family did all of the work. They searched door to door for witnesses, collecting statements. They went to every business on High Street asking for CCTV footage from the night Damien went missing. They found footage from Yorkie's after Chris left Damien, where Damien was seen in the restaurant with 5 other men. Damien had slurred speech, only being able to ask for one please, repeatedly responding to the man behind the counter with only those words before being handed some food, paying, and leaving. I'll put the clip right after this. After turning the footage over to the police, nothing happened. The family would check in periodically, seeing if the police had identified the other men in the video, but they continued the trend of being completely unhelpful. It turned out that the police actually ended up losing that footage, and in another instance, recorded over another important piece of footage after it was left in the machine. After weeks of poring over footage brought to them by the family, the police called Valerie in, and when they presented the series of clips they had of the man they had been tracking, Valerie had to point out that they had actually been tracking the wrong person this entire time. Upon hearing this news, the officers asked her, "Are you sure?" Yet another instance where just complete negligence and utter mishandling of all the information given in a very serious case that should have been handled as quickly as possible. Imagine being a very worried mother who is supposed to be able to trust the police in this situation. And not only are the police not being helpful at all, they are losing your information, they're losing your child on the CCTV footage, and when you tell them that they're tracking the wrong man, they ask you if you're sure. just the pure unbridled rage I would feel at that question. The police would routinely lose evidence, ignore reports, and sluggishly respond to calls about possible locations that Damien could have been. It seemed like they were not only disinterested in finding the boy, but almost purposefully preventing the case from progressing further. The family, forced to take charge once again, pored over the footage themselves, tracking Damien's whereabouts through the footage and witness reports, and were able to build the following timeline after Chris left Damien at the park at 10:30 p.m. At 10:45, there's a witness who knows Damien and sees him on High Street eating food. They both go into the Fountain Pub, where Damien is turned away for being 16 years old. 11 o'clock. Another witness who knows Damien sees him on her way to the Harbor Lights Pub at the north end of High Street. 11:10 p.m. Witness sees Damien at Harbor Lights Pub when Damien asks him for a cigarette. 11:15. The exact same witness sees him try to get into a blue Ford Fiesta that is sitting outside the pub. 11:20. Staff at Three Crowns Pub see Damien try to enter by the side door looking for his sister, and they refuse him away. 11:30. The staff at Yorkie's Fish and Chip Shop see Damien come in, the exact same staff that were there at 10 p.m., so they know what Damien looks like, and they experience the clip that was shown previously. 11:40. Witnesses see Damien outside Lloyd's Bank on High Street. 11:45. Members of staff at Harbor Lights say Damien came in while they were closing to ask the staff for cigarettes. 11:50. Another member of staff remembers him outside the pub talking to someone in a Ford Fiesta, possibly the same Ford Fiesta mentioned previously that he tried to open the door of. At 11:52, manageries at Yorkie's see him walk past and wave, heading south on the High Street. 11:52, a bus driver says Damien got onto the bus and asked to go to Cows. Damien produces a camera and tries to take a picture but fails, and he thanks the bus driver and gets off the bus. 11:59. Witnesses at Co-op have a brief conversation with Damien, who asks him for a cigarette. At 11:59, the previously mentioned witness who was sitting at the bus stop sees Damien. Damien approaches and says they are watching us, before walking off and heading back towards High Street. Witness is approached by a police officer immediately afterwards. At 12:06 a.m., Damien is spotted for the last time, briefly, on CCTV footage on Cows High Street. This tape has since been lost. Now, one of the most wild things about this is that the High Street that they're referencing multiple times is not an unmanned street. It's a very, very busy street. It's got all sorts of taverns, shops, inns all over the place that all cater to tourists and the party crowd of Cows. And so when you're talking about a person just disappearing from the main street, that'd be like someone disappearing from the main street of your town. It's very, very busy. There's so many people that you'd think someone would have seen what happened with Damien. Unfortunately, the case remained at a standstill until March 2002, when the investigation was handed over to Hampshire's Major Crime Department. And then the case was plugged into the Holmes computer system. It was around this time that an informant went to the police and claims he knows what happened to Damien. The person was a known associate of a local candy dealer named Nicky McNamara in the 1990s. 8 years later, he made contact with Valerie after his words had never been acted on. He claimed that Nicky McNamara had thrown a punch at Damien during an argument over some lettuce, but that he had not intended to kill Damien, that it was a beating gone wrong. He also alleged that Damien's body had been buried near a cycle path on the island in a sailbag. Upon hearing this news in 2010, Valerie brought it to the police. A new senior investigator brought a spate of arrests and searches soon after, all of which had links back to the candy scene and 1996 and one man, Nicky McNamara. The police also mounted a search along the cycle path that had been pointed out by the witness, but they found nothing. It was at this moment the police told Valerie that this informant had been unreliable before. After taking the statement back in 2002, the police actually had been told by the same informant that Damien had been buried in a copse of trees in Gurnard behind another psychopath. Over the years, there had been many, many rumors about what happened to Damien, from gruesome deaths involving serial PDF files, killers chopping him up, putting his body in crab pots, or just dying in an unfortunate bar fight. But one rumor refused to go away: Nikki McNamara and the story of the deadly fight. Unfortunately, the key suspect, Nikki, died in an overdose in 2002, right before the rumors started about his involvement in Damien's death. Those closest to him deny the possibility of a deathbed confession. Everything else, though, leads to a dead end. It is possible that the truth died with Nikki 23 years ago. The family currently is still checking in regularly with the Hampshire team, keeping an ear out for any news or any new testimony that might be the break in the case. Valerie gave the following statement during the BBC documentary in 2016. Finding his body, or what's left of it, would be a gift. And it might not end, the distress, but if I could place him somewhere, instead of thinking every awful thing that might have happened to him and wondering if he cried for us. It's a sorrow that defies explanation. Not having an answer has got to be worse feeling than knowing that the worst has happened. Well, there you have it. Feel free to theorize down in the comments. I myself definitely ascribe to the theory of a candy-fueled accidental death during a fight, as multiple people keep stating that he looked like he was on something. And who knows if something supplied to him previously might have been laced with something harder than his body was actually used to. The reports about his behavior definitely don't match up with someone who was just on some lettuce or just drink. And the footage of his messed up speech, it's with his being unable to ask for anything other than one please, it's like his body was shutting down and his brain couldn't handle it. It's clear his mind was clouded from something, but from what we may never know. I'd like to keep doing more videos of this style, more of a video essay with some popular topics slotted in between. These videos take longer to put together, of course, with research and script writing, and they take up more time than editing itself, honestly. If you have a suggestion for something you'd like me to cover, let me know. I'll probably be taking a look at the comments for future topic ideas. I have a list saved up, but some more wouldn't hurt for sure. I'll try to prioritize what you guys would like me to cover. Thanks for watching. It means the world. Have a good one.